This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created. To listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is Hacia Atherton, who is a globally recognized and award-winning voice in workplace culture reform, known for helping organizations turn burnout and bias into retention and results. She is the founder of the nonprofit Empowered Women in Trades, which supports women in male-dominated industries and promotes inclusive workplaces. She currently serves as Victoria's Hour Equal State Reference Group, advising the state's gender equality strategy, and on the Trobe Business School Advisory Board. With a master's in applied positive psychology from the University of Melbourne, which is specializing in positive organizational scholarship, and she's also a certified practicing accountant, CPA. She brings depth to leadership consulting, blending human insight with strategic execution. Through her keynote speaking and executive coaching, she equips leaders to elevate culture and psychological safety and, in turn, yield tangible results. She's also the author of Billion Dollar Blindspot. So, hi, Hacia,
Yes.
welcome to the program. Great to have
Thank
you.
you so much for having me.
So let's give a little context. Tell us a little bit about. Now did you catch how in the intro I did say Melbourne?
Yes.
Okay, so I've been
Which
there.
I realize there's Melbourne in Florida as well. So there's
Yeah,
Melbourne, Australia. When I say I'm from Melbourne, a lot of Americans look at me and they're like, but where's the accent from? So I
yeah,
realize there's a Melbourne here as well.
yes, there is. But the one in Australia is absolutely a beautiful city. Loved it. So give us a little context before we get started here. Where'd you grow up, and kind of tell us about your early life influences and so on, and then how you ended up here in the U.S. now doing coaching.
So I had a very interesting life growing up. My parents got divorced when I was quite young, and my dad stayed in the city and also had a beach place. So I got to grow up doing all things playing on the beach and enjoying the more urban lifestyle. And my mum moved out to the country property. So with her, I had the country lifestyle, my horses. I went to a small country school, and then later on in my schooling years came and lived with my dad and went to a big city school. So I've kind of experienced it all in my childhood, which is fantastic, and I think really feeds into my personality. I love lots of different things, dynamic experiences. I like to sit down with a cup of tea and read my book, or go out at the moment exploring all of the Christmas lights and the boat parades and doing all of those kind of different things. So I finished off my schooling in Melbourne and then started my university career pathway, and ironically started off in law. And young-eyed, bushy-tailed 18-year-old me got a little bit, I think, overwhelmed and disheartened about what it was like to be a female in the law industry, especially in Australia. We've got barristers, and they're the ones that go to court and speak to the judges. And that's what I wanted to be, but it was pretty tough back in 2006 for females in that industry. So I actually went off and did like fashion design. I was a model at the time, so I did a year of fashion design and enjoyed that. But wanted to come back to something not as creative, and was a financial planner that eventually led into my accounting qualifications, and all in the corporate world. And my family company back in Australia, we manufacture medical infection control equipment. I'm the fifth generation. It started off as a plumbing family. And yeah, and my brother's a plumber, my dad's a plumber. So I actually come from a family of plumbers.
Interesting, interesting. Now, you also had quite an equestrian upbringing. You were in competition and quite good at a very high level, I understand. And so tell us a little bit about that experience. And then, unfortunately, you had an accident in that.
I did. So I was a very high level dressage rider, training on my young horse to qualify for the World Equestrian Games. But sadly, on a cold winter's night in July back in Australia in 2017, she decided she didn't want to do any more training and looked for an opportunity for what I call is role reversal. So I spent all of these years sitting on top of her. She reared up vertically and I fell off her, and she decided she lost her balance and she sat down on top of me pretty much. So that was not great, seeing as she weighed about 600 kilos, so over 1,000 pounds. Landing on top of you from height crushes your body. So I was taken to hospital and told I may never walk again in any meaningful way. I had after a couple of days in hospital, a 9-hour surgery trying to put my pelvis and pelvis and other issues back to some kind of stability. And 6 months in hospital, I managed to teach myself to stand again. I could do a couple of little shuffle walks. So I was very, very proud to actually walk outside the hospital doors. We kind of wheelchaired me up to the door, and I took a handful of steps to walk across that threshold for my release to home. And since that's happened, I've had over 30 surgeries trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And then the rest of the story is you not only walked again, but you actually trained, and I understand that you ran a half marathon. So
Yes, I
you
did.
you must have had a good relationship with your physiotherapist and worked really hard to get back to what you're doing.
Yeah, and a big part of it, which led to my love of positive psychology and psychology in general, was really understanding the psychology of pain and how I could kind of mentally push myself through some severe pain to be able to what to do what I wanted to do. And running the half marathon, my right hip has now been replaced. And when I was told that the right hip had to be replaced, I thought, why don't I use it up? Like, let's train for a half marathon. Let's use this hip, my natural hip, to its absolute last centimeter, which I most certainly did. And then they replaced it a few months later.
Do you mind if I ask you how old you were when you had that accident?
I was 29, so I actually had my 30th birthday in hospital.
Oh my gosh, that's hard to come back from that as a physical therapist, as we say here in the U.S., but physiotherapist worldwide. I know how hard that must have been and how much effort you had to do to get back. But it sounds like you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, it was definitely the how do you eat an elephant kind of concept, one bite at a time. So I was getting a bit overwhelmed with, I guess, the overall big goal that I wanted to be mobile again and everything like that. And when you can not even sit up in the hospital bed and they're asking you what your three goals are for the day, and my third was always, I want to walk again. And they used to look at me and I think they thought I was crazy. But how I kind of worked on that, and I work same concept in leadership and strategy. You've got your big overarching goal, and that was always for me to walk. And then the another two goals were realistic ones I could achieve that day, but got me closer to that number three. So I spent a lot of time working with the medical team to kind of explain the psychology behind why number three was always walking when number one might be sit up for 2 minutes, and number two is be able to transfer from my bed to my wheelchair or different things like that. And that was so I could always keep my eye on the prize and feel that number one and number two goal was getting me towards that walking again, not just getting through the day.
Yeah, well, congratulations. It's I'm sure been a long journey, but happy to hear you're doing what you're doing. And as we can see, for those that are watching this on video, right behind your left shoulder there is your book that's great called Billion Dollar Blindspot, and that's it's well done. It's very inclusive as far as information, whatever, and that's not an easy undertaking. I'm sure that took some effort and some time.
Yes, it did, and lived experience. So a lot of the anecdotes I've put in the book have happened over years, but the understanding of the positive psychology, which really underpins it, the hospital experience was my training ground where I applied so much I talk about in the book to get me through what is such an adverse time. And you're in an environment where it is sad, it's depressing. You're with other rehab people that have had horrible injuries as well. And obviously, with health going back and forth, it's very high stakes. So doctors are often quite stressed and concerned about you. So to be able to find joy and positive mindset in a hospital environment, I think is super challenging. And I really put a lot of how I managed to achieve that goal into the book as well.
And in the book, you talk about how strength, does not lie in the absence of challenges. It really is comes from, dealing with challenges and your ability to navigate those challenges. And you say with resilience, optimism, and unwavering determination, which you certainly lived it.
Definitely. I've definitely lived it. And that's when people go, how did you become so resilient? It's I showed up every single day for the challenges that I faced. And when I lay in bed at the end of the day, I reflect and go, what did today teach me? What is this challenge teaching me? And I always try and, I guess, find the meaning of our hardest moments because they're there for a reason. And I truly believe that.
And you also say that strength is base approach grounded in empathy, which I think is interesting, and authenticity, and then a growth mindset, which is what you just described.
Yes, yeah. And empathy is a very important thing. I had to learn to show myself a lot of empathy during that time, coming from being a high level athlete, a high performer, always kind of a high achiever, to all of a sudden you're stuck in a prison of your own body. In the first 3 months, I was completely non-weight bearing. So even if someone put a glass of water that little bit too far away from me to be able to stretch and reach, I couldn't get that glass of water, or if I dropped something on the floor. And at the start of that experience, I was very hard on myself. I was saying very unkind things to myself. I definitely wasn't showing empathy to myself and my situation, which was affecting my ability to show up with a positive mindset, to heal my body, and to really lean into the exercises I was able to do. So once I started showing empathy to myself and kindness, that just really shift how I was showing up, how my health was progressing, and everything like that. So I saw firsthand the power of having empathy for yourself and also empathy for the medical team around me. It was a very challenging time for them. They don't have necessarily all the answers. The human body is still a little bit of a mystery, especially when it comes to nerve issues and everything. So addressing my team, my medical team with that empathy, I really saw a shift in them, and they became more courageous to be a little bit more innovative, to bring out of the box ideas to me because I didn't just dismiss it. I was like, okay, let's explore it. Let's use me as a guinea pig. Let's see if this mirror therapy or that therapy or this stimulation is going to help. And if it doesn't, then we learn that that's not the right option. So coming to the team with empathy, my medical team and myself, was such a game changer.
So how did you learn that? Was that from previous beliefs or training, or was it something you just discovered on your own, or did you have somebody mentoring you on how to think that way? Because again, as a physical therapist myself, I know how effective that is, but that's not always natural for people to look at it and think of it that way. So how did you get there?
It was definitely a combination from my dressage training because when you are doing a dressage test, if you've got a mistake, you've only got seconds until the next movement. So you have to have, I guess, empathy for yourself and your horse to go, all right, we didn't do that well. Let's focus on the next movement. Let's let go and not dwell on the mistakes. And so that ability to kind of let go and move on, which I feel is a component of being empathetic and not dwelling on the bad, was naturally always there, but it was more my psychology team in hospital because I was getting very depressed. I was very anxious. When something like that happens, you lose your sense of who you are. What is your identity? Who am I if I can't walk, especially coming from an athletic background? So that was a lot of education and understanding of psychology and positive psychology in particular on how to be empathetic to myself. I've always naturally been empathetic, I think, to other people, but I never really showed myself self-empathy. And that was the biggest win I think I learned in hospital, is how to be kind and empathetic to myself.
That's really a great point. And in developing your book and writing your book and so on, you came up with this acronym called PERMA, with positive psychology. So just explain to us a little bit about what's the acronym mean, and how do you use that now with your coaching?
Yeah, so this was a well-being framework in positive psychology that completely changed the game for me. And there's actually an online research source where you can do a survey and it will tell you kind of the levels of each pillar. So if you look at each pillar, you've got P stands for positive emotion, and that's again coming into that focus of gratitude. There was a time in my hospital bed when the sun used to shine on me for 2 hours. And before I started practicing PERMA, I used to be so grumpy about that sunshine. And it was reminding me I couldn't go outside, I couldn't get out of my bed, and it would put me in such a bad mood. And when I started to understand the power of gratitude and how to shift your mindset and had some gratitude prompt questions when the sunshine came, I started to go, well, how amazing. I get 2 hours every day to lie in this sun, feel the warmth, read a book. Other people out there have to go to work today. I don't have to go to work at the moment. And just really shifted my mindset. I started looking forward to that 2 hours of sunshine instead of being really negative about it. So that's an example of how gratitude and the positive emotion can really change things. And then you've got the E, which is looking at engagement. So those moments where you really lose track of time and you kind of look up and you're like, I've been doing this activity for X amount of hours and it feels like 5 minutes. And that's really good for our psychological well-being. So in hospital, like I like being creative. So I used to just coloring in books like a little kid would do, but I lost myself in those moments and the days would go very quickly. And then R is the relationship pillar, which, especially when you're facing any form of adversity, whether that's work or home, often people like to withdraw and actually disconnect from the relationships around them. So in hospital, I again worked out, how can I be the sunshine for other people? The world was still coming to me. So how can I make the person that's cleaning my room laugh, or the person that's bringing me my lunch check in and see how a kid went at their swimming carnival, and just be that moment of a high quality connection in the relationships. And like I started looking forward to people coming into my room as well, instead of being like, oh, I'm getting disturbed again. I was like, oh, I'm going to get an update on this or get an update on that, which was amazing. And then the M is that sense of meaning. And really understanding what is that meaning in our life? Why are we showing up? Whether that's for your family, whether that's for your community, or what is that purpose outside of just you that you can really connect with? And then achievement is again our wins. And the achievement pillar is the one that I did so much work on, because for me, coming off being a high level athlete, achievement was winning. You know, that's when we were achieving and we're progressing. But when I had to understand that sometimes for me, achievement was being able to keep 3 meals down, because I had troubles with my stomach. So I was struggling to hold food down. So sometimes the day was just I achieved success if I ate 3 meals and they stayed in my stomach. You know, that was a sense of achievement. So during my hospital stay, I really, really re-scoped the meaning of success and achievement.
And what a transformation. I mean, you can just imagine, and you experience it. I can imagine how looking at it that way with that different mindset just changes everything. And instead of
Yeah,
angry and annoying and, hard to deal with, now all of a sudden you're this welcoming, uh, thankful, grateful type of person. I'm sure it was a change to the staff who dealt with you,
it
and it
was.
was
And
good
when
for
I
you
got
as well.
discharged, a lot of them were sad and they threw a goodbye party and they're like, well, you know, it's great that you're healthy enough and well enough to go home, but we're actually really sad. We don't want you to go home. And that just goes to show, like, I wasn't doing anything special except for changing the way I was showing up, which was for myself. And some of my best memories, like people feel sorry for me that my 30th birthday was in hospital, but I had already started practicing all of the PERMA framework and positive psychology. So I actually had the best 30th birthday because the staff did little special things for me. I remember getting wheeled into the hydro pool and they all had birthday hats on and little streamers and everything. I used to hold a little rubber ducky in the pool because I couldn't do much and I just played with the rubber ducky. They put like a little birthday hat on the rubber ducky and everything like that. So my 30th birthday was a magical birthday, but that is connected to the mindset and how I showed up to enjoy that day. I could have quite easily been, woe's me, I feel sorry for myself, I'm stuck in hospital, I can't go out dancing with my girlfriends, to it was a magical day.
That's great. So how did you get to the US then? You moved to Florida, I think.
Yes.
Why make that move?
So I came to the US to speak at a conference in 2023, and that was the first time. And it was actually West Palm Beach, Florida, where that conference was. And I got off the plane, I saw the big American flag at the airport, and there was something inside me that just like a sense of peace or settled. I just felt like I'd come home. And I'd never been to the US before, so I can't really describe the feeling. And then spending the time in the US around that conference, and I came back again in 2024 for another conference, and just really fell in love with the culture here, the people, the mindset, the extreme polar differences that are here. And I actually enjoy being in spaces where there's quite polar opposites and a lot of difference that I know that can sometimes create conflict. But I really love the energy that's created when you do have two extreme opposite ideas as well. So then I decided when I flew back from that conference in November 2024, I landed in Melbourne, Australia, and I said, that's it. 2025 is my last year in Australia. I'm going to move to America somehow. And then I met my partner who's American. And so there's a love story behind that. And then we set up our consulting business over here. And I've moved here and settled. So Clearwater Beach, Florida is because that's where he lives.
Yeah, that's
He's
great.
still alive.
Well, that's good. So, so tell us a little, just to give us an idea of your day to day, what you do now. So, tell us about who you work with, what you do. Do you still give keynotes? Just give us a little bit about what your business looks like and what you do in that business now.
Yeah, so very much still doing keynotes and workshops. So very much I enjoy, particularly like most of my clients right now, going through whether they're being acquired by another company or they're doing buy and build themselves. So I love when you bring a couple of different businesses together, whether that's in the trade space. And back in Australia, I was a CEO of a plumbing company and we brought in an electrical division and a waste management division. And then over here, one of my clients is doing the same thing, building kind of a portfolio of construction-based trade companies that will all need to come together and operate under one umbrella. And I have another client that's doing a similar thing, but in the marketing space as well. So they are merging different marketing and branding companies across Australia and the US all to come into one different thing. And what I love about those kind of type of clients is there's so much uncertainty. You've got two very strong different ways of doing things when you bring together two different companies, different processes, different structures. And I really work with my clients to look at the three pillars of the people, the processes, and the profit. So looking at the people, what is the culture that we want to build? What is the capabilities of the current leadership team and where is the gaps and what kind of training needs to be done? Or is there a recruitment, a particular hire that needs to be done in the leadership team? And then looking at how we actually support from the CEO all the way down to the most junior role and what that kind of training looks like to be able to implement a really high performing culture. And then looking at the processes as well of what technology we can bring in to streamline things, what technology that one company has that could, we'll keep that and we'll merge the other company into it. And that brings in a whole change management piece because when you're particularly technology, putting that into a company that might have been doing things one way for many, many years, it can be really overwhelming. So I love to go through a co-design process with everyone in that company going, this is where we want to get to. This is the technology or the processes that we're currently using. What's great, what's not great. And then how together do we implement what we need to do to get to the ideal state of putting these two companies together or growing a company as well. Another client of mine is going through massive, massive growth very, very quickly, which when you've got cracks in your business and you put that kind of pressure on your leaders, your processes, your systems, sometimes you just feel like you turn into putting spot fires out absolutely everywhere. And I'm working with that leader to move them and their executive team out of a reactive state into a responsive state. So how do we actually respond to these spot fires instead of feeling like you're just going from one fire to another fire and putting a band-aid on everything? How do we actually step back and see these spot fires as something that gives us an opportunity to build a more robust way of doing business, so you don't just keep chasing your tail all day?
And one of the processes or strategies that you use is I think you developed the REM or REM, which stands for Respect Equality Model. So how is this different than traditional approaches in that area?
So for me, it's an element that I think is quite overlooked when we get stressed, and especially as leaders, we often don't even show ourselves enough respect. And that can be, again, self-care. Take a minute sometimes in between meetings to just respect what your body needs. Go get some water, take a breath. If the first meeting was quite high conflict, you need to just work out whatever way you can reduce your stress before you go into the next meeting. And sometimes that's respecting your time and saying, we need to push this meeting for 5 minutes. I need 5 minutes to get myself to becoming the best person to walk into that meeting. So I really work with leaders first to understand what self-respect looks like. Are they showing themselves respect? And then how do we show respect to the team as well? And for a lot of leaders that I work with, sometimes that's learning to be patient enough to just listen, especially if you're going through a lot of change and there's a lot of stress in the business. Sometimes your employees just need to get it off their chest. I know you feel like you're becoming like an adult daycare at times, but just giving them that respect
Yeah.
to make them feel seen, make them feel validated. Sometimes explaining the roadmap to them, like they might be so stuck in the challenge that's happening, they can't actually see, well, we're going through all of this because this is where we're getting to. And this is the challenge that we have to overcome to get there. And then looking at the wider respect of the team. So something I do with my clients is develop a code of conduct. So what behaviors are we seeing in this team right now that we do not want to see? What behaviors in this team is desirable and do want to see? And then I get the whole team come together to build that code of conduct. And again, give permission that if you're not following that code of conduct, you allow another team member to call you out and in a respectful way. So what does that feel like for you? Is that a verbal conversation? Is that an email just saying, hey, I noticed that whatever behavior is starting to show? And actually get the team to understand what's a respectful way to engage with you if you're starting to not follow the agreed code of conduct as well.
And in the book, you mentioned too that just what you described there, you're creating this psychological safety. So, where do leaders kind of unintentionally kill that psychological safety?
Yeah. And that comes back to, again, your own form of emotional mastery. I get how stressful leadership can be. I can get how like triggering some of your team members can be, especially if you haven't built the team and you're coming in with a team that's already been there. So with a lot of my leaders, it's very much working on that emotional mastery. So if someone in your team has said something and you immediately want to shut them down or kind of say that's so irrelevant or that's like just useless information information right now, or all of those kind of things. When you're in that reactive mode, which we've all done it, it's learning how to step back and go, okay, what is this employee actually saying to me right now? Because if they're defending themselves or they're defending their strategy, or they're not, if they're being really, really silent and not saying anything and not speaking up, especially during a stressful time, why is that person not speaking up? And with a lot of my leaders that I work with, it's around taking yourself out of the situation. So, what is this employee trying to say to you? Where is their stress coming from? Is it coming from home? Is it coming from work? Is it coming from another colleague? And then it's kind of like untangling that stress ball from them. And from a lot of my employees, sometimes I will say to them, I hear what you're saying about your concerns about the project, but I feel like there's something greater going on than the project. So talk to me about where are you feeling the pressure? Because you're projecting the pressure onto the project, but what else is going on for you? And sometimes it comes to like, well, I actually don't feel competent enough to use this new technology, and I feel like I'm going to let the client down if all of a sudden I'm using this technology when I'm used to using the other one, da 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 da. And then through creating that psychological safety, you're like, oh, well, this employee might need a little bit more training than all of the other employees. Let's invest an extra 5, 10 hours in this employee and in their training. Instead of kind of creating an environment where they feel they can't come to you saying that they're struggling, it's how do you set up that environment for them to actually come and say that to you? And I need a little bit more extra training than the other people on the team.
And in the process of doing all these things we're discussing now, you bring up too in the book that the value of small, small progress, small monumental programs, whatever, to do this. It's not the big transformational thing you do in a weekend and everything's fine. It takes time to go through this and just start to create environments where people can thrive, and you have to
Mhm.
you have to be willing to go through the journey.
You have to be willing to go through the journey. And it's also thinking from how I lead, and this comes back to creating that psychological safety. I have let go of people because the job is not right for that person as well. And that's been a really tough conversation with some people I've had to let go, going, you're a great person. I see how much effort you're putting in, but this job, whether it's a sales job or something, is just not for you. So, how do we spend a little bit of time working out what's the right kind of job for you? What's the right kind of industry for you? Who in my network could I maybe get you to have a cup of coffee with, or something like that? And if you deal with people like that and stop saying them as like, I just need to fire this person because it's not working, the amazing thing with the people I've let go with that mindset of respect and having that positive conversation of helping them have that moment of self-awareness, some of those employees I've let go have become my clients. They've gone to another company that I then work, and they're like, well, I want to refer you business. Thank you for helping me get this new job. Now I want to be one of your clients.
That says a lot. That says a lot. You must have handled it extremely well for that. So most
Yeah.
most people don't forgive that way, and they kind of feel like a victim. But obviously, if they're going to hire you, they respect you. So that's amazing. In the book, you also talk about kind of the feminine and masculine psychology, and how I think it was Jung who said that wholeness really is when you have both present. And we look in the book, you talk too about male dominated industries and so on. And I think sometimes the masculine thing can kind of take over, where it's aggressive and do this and do it my way and
Hmm.
whatever. And you talk a lot about you need that feminine side too, and the good leaders do have both.
They very much do. And the masculine psychology is not necessarily anchored into biology. When I was a high level dressage rider, I was very much in my masculine psychology. It was that killer shark focus of how do I make this movement better? How do I get a better dressage score? How do I get my horse fitter, stronger, healthier? But the problem with that narrow focus, and it happened to me sometimes, I so narrow focused killer sharked on the horse, I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't drinking enough water. I wasn't looking after myself, and then I let the team down as well. And I see that in so many of the trade-based businesses that I work in. It's a lot of the male leaders are just so far anchored in that masculine. They think we can just beat the problem down. The harder and faster and more aggressive and speed that we can throw at this problem will fix the problem. But they don't take that time to step back and go, does this fix actually create more problems down the track? Or if we fix this here, does it break something there? So stepping into that feminine psychology is a little bit of your intuition of like, let's have a think about it. If we push over this domino, is there going to be a referral effect somewhere else? And that's going into more of that wider community thought. If we fix something in our sales process, does that create issues in our delivery process? So sometimes it's stepping back and anchoring yourself in more of that feminine way. And same in dealing with those conversations. And I've been there with some of my team members that I just want to be like, just be quiet, like stop talking. I just cannot handle this conversation anymore. And some of the leaders that are anchored in that masculinity will kind of kill a shark, shut it off, go, this is irrelevant, drink a cup of concrete and harden up. Where if you're anchored a little bit more on the feminine side, you can say, look, I understand. I hear that you're going through a lot of challenges right now. What support do you actually need? Because at the end of the day, we still got to deliver the project. We still got to go there. Understand that you're struggling right now. So you tell me what support looks like, and I'll tell you if I can give you that.
And I look back on your example you gave, and you said, as I use my masculine size on the horse because I'm going to kill the shark and I want it to be perfect. Yet, isn't it equally true that the horses are so sensitive that they can sense your stress, they can sense what you're
Mhm.
feeling, and they're going to sense that power battle, or they can sense, your feminine side as well. So I think that's a great example where you can't do it just one way. You have to have both.
Exactly. And I used to ride a stallion, and that was the one area that really taught me about the balance of masculine and feminine. Because you come too hard on a stallion and you become too forceful, they'll come back at you with their stallion strength. Very, very quickly. Where if you become a little bit more in your feminine, a little bit more gentle with them, like you can have this beautiful yin and yang environment, but a stallion still needs a moment of very strong boundaries and firm boundaries as well. I think the same happens in leadership. Yes, we need to have firm boundaries, and I talk about this a lot with leaders that lead too far into being empathetic. You can burn yourself out. And being empathetic for your team doesn't mean taking on their emotional weight. And that's where you go a little bit more into your masculine psychology of like clear boundaries of, okay, enough's enough. We need to work out again. Sometimes if your personal life is so hard to deal with, this high pressure job might not be the right job for you right now. So why don't we either, if there's a way to move you in the company for 6 months while you wait for your divorce to go through, or sometimes it's again going back to that hard conversation of like, you're going to go off a cliff if you keep battling your personal life and then having this really high pressure, high expectation job. You can't keep doing that. So one of them has to give.
One of the best books I've read recently on leadership was it's called Think Like a Horse, and it's written by a horse whisperer from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and how he trains horses to, get, to be ridden and so on. And he goes again, the old way was just, dominate them and overpower them and basically be mean to them until they give up. But the horse whisperer way is to just, get connected with a horse and make the horse want to do it. And supposedly, he can do that in like 30 minutes. And
Yeah,
it's just a fascinating book. So I think your experience
I
with horse
love that.
could probably relate to that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's bringing that fun and play. Like horses, they love fun, they love play, they learn through playing as well. And bringing that into our leadership style, I think that's also very important to make sure we're bringing that fun and that play into how we lead, and how we work with our team, especially during high stress times. And sometimes with my team, when it has been super high stress time, I have called a half an hour meeting with like donuts on the table and yummy food. I'm like, this meeting is literally just so everyone gets half an hour away from phone calls, emails. Let's look at some bad dad jokes. What's the funniest cat video you've seen on Instagram? What's something that makes you laugh? Let's just spend half an hour laughing, being silly, being stupid, enjoying some donuts, and then we can go back to the fighting the fires. But let's just take half an hour to step back and have some fun.
Another powerful driver you talk about in the book too is, the that powerful need that people have of belonging.
Yeah.
I think that that's a good word used. I've heard it used more lately because it's so true. I think human nature is we want to belong, we want to be part of something. So cultures that recognize that and work towards that, I think is very helpful.
Yes. And there's some easy ways as a leader. It's just asking those questions of what does a sense of belonging look like for you? And birthdays is a great example. I've had some people on my team that love their birthdays. They want everyone to know. They want to have a cake in the lunchroom. They want cards. They want balloons. They're really into their birthday. Some members on the team are like, I really just do not want my birthday mentioned, all that kind of stuff. So I would still maybe send them a nice text message going like, I know we're not talking about the pink elephant in the room today, but I genuinely hope you have a nice day. And I'll do that as their leader to acknowledge their birthday. And then the other one, I'll walk in with the balloons and the cake and do all of that kind of stuff. But I've worked out from my team and communicate to my team too what a sense of belonging looks like, and feels like. Sometimes for other team members I've had, that is they're too nervous to speak up in some meetings and they actually want me to create space for them and call on them and say, okay, what's your opinion? Some of my other team members are like, if I want to speak, I'll speak. You don't need to make space for me. If I have an opinion, I'll put it on the table. So me as a leader, it's working out what makes my team feel a sense of belonging in that meeting and how do I create that? Sometimes it's stepping back for them to have room. Sometimes it's leaning in to create room for someone that's a little bit shyer. Or again, sometimes I've had like them actually instant message me in the meeting being like, I'm too scared to bring up this topic, but could we touch base on this topic? And if you lead the topic, maybe I'll feel more comfortable. So I'll bring
Yeah.
the topic to the table. And that's how we create a sense of belonging, not foosball tables and yoga mats and fruit bowls. It's really understanding what your team needs to feel like they belong in that room.
That is a perfect description of really understanding the personalities of who's on your team and building relationships before the meeting, and so
Hmm.
that. And I have examples of that too. And when I was leading in my CEO job or other leadership jobs, where you're right. Some people, especially people that are very introverted, have a tough time breaking into a conversation. So if you know that and you feel like they can add value, then you have to give them a way to get into the conversation. And as a leader, you can do that. But that's just knowing your people really well,
Yeah.
which is, I think the more you know them, the more you understand them, the better you can lead their talents.
Yeah. And the sense of belonging is very interesting. The amount of people I've asked, what does belonging feel like, sound like to you? And they're like, I don't actually know the answer to that question. I think that is a problem that we've created in society in general. We've been taught to conform, not understand how to belong. So, any leader that's listening to this, reflecting on yourself, what's a sense of belonging for me in my business? And asking your team that and actually working through and trial and error. And I've done that with some of my team. If they think that's what they want, we trial that or we set that mechanism up, and then they're like, actually, no, that didn't feel right. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't think as humans we've really been taught to understand how we feel that sense of belonging.
Yeah. It really resonated with me too, because I always think, I've always felt that culture is everything. And, in some mastermind groups I've been, whatever, people would tease me and call me the culture guy. And so I think culture is very, very important. And you talk about here how, often CEOs, because there's so much pressure and there's so much uh, you know, stress on to reach the revenues, and when they focus on the revenues, when they focus on the profits, whatever, that isn't what speaks to people. And so you have to have cultures that you have to appreciate. It can't be all emphasis on the quarterly earnings or the profits or the revenue. It's also got to be on the culture. And I think that good leaders that do that will focus on that. And usually, if you focus on the culture and what people need and the belonging we just talked about, whatever, often the profits and the revenues are going to follow.
Yeah. And I always, when I've had CEO roles or CEOs I work with, I say it's your role as the Chief Empowerment Officer. You're there to empower your team. So understanding what that looks like, how they can have empowerment and ownership over the numbers too. And then when it comes to those quarterly reports or whatever, I always love to bring that concept of storytelling. This is what the data is on the screen, but what has that story told us of the last quarter? What's the numbers telling us the story behind our clients, behind our team? Are we seeing high turnover rates for this quarter? So what's that story telling us as the executive team that's happening in our company? Or have we brought on a whole bunch of clients, but they've only come for one service and not we haven't been able to cross sell them. So again, creating that sense of not necessarily just putting up the numbers and go that bottom line of the P&L's red, so therefore everyone needs to put their heads down and work harder next quarter. It's actually going deeper and understanding what's the story and how do we actually then empower our people to do what they need to do based off that story of either client retention or employee retention or client upsell, cross sell. And that's where I see so much success and people actually looking forward to the quarterly numbers if you can bring storytelling into it as well.
And also understanding what people respond to. You bring up in the book too that, humans, as humans, we crave a sense of purpose. We crave mastery and connection. And so if you understand that about people, you find ways to help nurture that, because that's what's gonna, again, if people are, they understand the purpose, they're good at something, and you let them do it, and then you're connected to the rest of the team.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it's gonna work. It doesn't seem that hard, but a lot of people miss that point, I think.
Yeah. And where can you give your team autonomy? Like for a lot of people I consult to,
Yeah.
with KPIs, they're very important to put into businesses, but I ask so many CEOs and leaders, how much autonomy have you given your team to build their own KPIs? Have you come to them and said, this is my KPI, I want 20% growth in X, Y, and Z? What are three KPIs you think you personally can set to help us get to that? And when you do that, instead of dictating, this is what we want to go, this is what we're going to get, you get some really fantastic KPIs that the people are bought into, has got that sense of belonging, but you're also empowering their autonomy to own their own KPIs, and they're much likely to lean into it if it's something they feel that they own, than something they've been told to do.
And what is the science behind, kind of this active listening that we're talking about, and this positive psychology? There's science behind this. It's not just feel good. I mean, research has shown that this is very significant, makes a difference.
Very much so. And what I love about the positive psychology field, so clinical psychology very much focused on the deficit of humans when they're clinically, psychologically unwell. How do we get them back to that baseline? But positive psychology, all of the research has been like, how do we actually get humans to thrive? And the research discovered we've got three basic foundations to our psychological needs, which is a sense of autonomy, which we've touched base on, a sense of competence, and a sense of belonging. And when we can really start to bring them in as humans, we really start to thrive and our psychological well-being. It's like going to the gym and getting heavier and heavier weights. You get stronger and stronger and stronger. So that's where if we can bring that positive psychology through the PERMA framework, looking at how we can give our team a sense of uh, autonomy, how we're improving their competence and that sense of belonging, all of a sudden you get this team that absolutely thrives, even during the hardest times, like my not-for-profit over in Australia. Not-for-profit land is tough. They probably work more hours than they're paid for because they're so bought into the mission of what we're doing. But I also give them so much autonomy of this is where we're going. I don't mind if we zig and we zag, or we zag and we zig, or you as the team, how do we get to this point? And they design the roadmap. I don't feed them the roadmap. And when I started leading that way, there's just so much more buy-in, so much more excitement when they do achieve getting a grant or doing something in there. As the CEO, I can coach them, I can guide them, I can kind of go, well, let's stress test your answer. I always say, like, let's roast your answer. If you think that's the best way, where is the risks? Where is the weakness? And that active listening of understanding what they're saying, and then I pick up on their weaknesses and their blind spots, and I can kind of push them into that moment of seeing their own blind spot or their own bias that they're bringing into their decision making, all through just asking a little bit more questions. So a lot of leaders I work with, I very much go, how can you step back as a leader and give your team room and room to fail sometimes? And I've watched my own team members fail, knowing full well that failure was going to happen. So I'm prepared to get them on their feet pretty quickly, but sometimes you just got to let your team trip over and fall.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit more in a nutshell about this nonprofit that you work with in Australia. What's their mission and what are you trying to do?
So the mission is to get the female representation in skilled trades to 30% by 2030. Some trades are starting to get close to double digits. Some trades like welding has just got to its first full digit of 1% female representation. So a
Wow.
long way to go there. So we really help with that attraction and retention piece. So looking at supporting our clients with their attraction strategies. So how are they positioning the roles? We have like immersive recruitment days where the women get to come into the client, experience the trade for a day, and then decide if they want to go on with that, up to like 3-week pre-employment programs where they get all of their qualifications that they need, OH&S, the safety regulations and all those kind of things. And then we work with our clients on the retention piece. And that can be anything from, sometimes this is the first female that they're employing. So let's put some sanitary bins in your toilets and some sanitary items in your first aid kit, all the way up to working on the culture work, connecting them with like workwear suppliers that actually have female cut workwear and work boots instead of just putting a female in an extra small man's clothing that's not fitting them properly. So we've built an ecosystem to really help with that retention piece and connect our clients with the right suppliers. Even for tools, some tool companies now are making more female specific tools, are often quite lighter. And it's ironic, a lot of the males that work in our clients are like, actually, that's a way better tool to use. And I want that tool too. So a lot of stuff they often bring in that's more appropriate for the female. A lot of the men are like, I prefer working with that and wear as well.
Well, that sounds amazing. So now you're the CEO of this nonprofit in Australia. Is that hard to manage from the
So
US?
I've actually more stepped to the chair of the board now. So I've got an amazing general manager over there, Mel, who's very much stepped up into running the show over there. And now I'm kind of, yeah, more of her mentor and guider, working a lot more on that 12, 18-month strategy at that board level. Where are we heading? And then she kind of trims the sails every day to make sure we get to that direction.
That's great. Well, hey, Sia, in anticipation of our discussion today, what haven't I brought up or what haven't we talked about that you want to be sure and get in the show here?
Wow, I think we've covered everything. It's been a very diverse conversation as well. I think something to unpack a little bit more is just exactly the shifts in the workforce and what's happening with AI and the trade space. I think the trades are going to be an amazing career pathway for younger people as well. And I really encourage even leaders that are losing their roles because they're in middle management and they might have been in a marketing company or hospitality where AI and technology is kind of taking out a lot of that leadership stuff. The trades industry can really benefit from transferable skills. So please look at the trades industry as your career pathway because it's an industry that's really, really going to boom. And I think it's the industry that's going to become the human industry because as much as AI is going to do a lot of stuff, it still needs plumbers, electricians, and welders to build the data centers, maintain the data centers, and AI is not going to be able to build its own data center.
Yeah, that's for sure. So at this point in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question, and that question is, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
My pearl of wisdom around that would be very connected to making sure you're leading yourself before you're leading your team. If
Mm.
you're not getting up and looking in the mirror and proud of who you are, and you're not leading yourself to be 1% better every single day, you're not going to be able to be the leader your team deserves.
Well said. Well, hey, Sia, this has been a great conversation. Your book is fantastic, by the way.
Thank
Well
you.
done. It's great, and I would recommend that to people. And it's just been a great discussion. You know, you're a breath of fresh air. I'll bet people that work for you love working for you, and your
Yeah,
clients feel like that. So
I generally do get that feedback
yeah.
when I move on or leave or something like that. A lot of the team are like, "Oh, we're so
Yeah.
sorry to see you go." So yeah, thank you.
Well, you have the knowledge, obviously, you've had the experience, but you got the vibe, and I can feel that through the screen here, even, not even sitting in the same room with you. So that's important. But anyway, it's I've learned a lot. It sounds like you're doing great things. So good luck to you in the future, and hope you keep doing what you love doing.
Thank you for an amazing conversation.
Okay, take care and have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.